All right, welcome. The appointed hour is here. Welcome to all the deputies and alternates to the 80th General Convention for the first of its kind virtual online orientation. I'd like to ask our chaplain, Lester McKenzie, to open us with prayer.
Gratitude, President Jennings, a gift to see you all, friends. Jesus, we are here. Jesus, we are here. Jesus, we are here for you. Jesu tawapano, Jesu tawapano, Jesu tawapano, tawapano, zitarenu. Holy God, we gather on this morning. Bless this beginning stages as we journey. Bless this orientation. Bless the leadership. Bless President Jennings. We give you thanks for everyone who has taken the time to pause, to learn, to begin, to prepare. Envelop each person on the Zoom room with your loving touch, your nurturing touch, your blessing. All this we lift up through Jesus, because I know you love it when we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Lester. And thanks to all of you who have taken time to be here today on yet one more Zoom meeting. Today I want to do several things that during an ordinary General Convention we would do during our first legislative session. But because our time in Baltimore will be short, we can take care of some introductory business now so we can get down to work quickly a week from today when we are together in person. And the first of those items of business are my opening remarks. House of Deputies Rules of Order 1A specifies that the President and Secretary will ensure that a copy of the Holy Scriptures is reverently displayed at all meetings of the House of Deputies. Each convention, the President chooses a verse to which the Bible on the platform will be opened. For this convention, I've chosen Colossians 3:12-7. It's a passage about clothing yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. The one about bearing with each other, forgiving one another, and letting the peace of Christ rule in your heart. You know, the verses about those virtues that can be a stretch even on a perfect day when you are relaxed and refreshed, much less on, say, day 3 of a strange General Convention when you're tired and sick of wearing a mask and hungry because there aren't any boxed lunches anywhere to be found. And you just want things in the House of Deputies to be the way they used to be. So you see why I want the Holy Scriptures reminding us to clothe ourselves in compassion front and center. And honestly, I want it to be right where I can see it. I can pretty much guarantee that at some point during this experiment we call the 80th General Convention, you and I, and every single one of us is going to need to practice compassion for each other, for ourselves, and for the House of Bishops. Many of you, nearly 50% today, are first-time deputies. And when we're together, you may tire of hearing how things at General Convention used to be, or how they should be. You might not have much of an idea of what you're getting into. And in fact, besides compassion, you might not even know that what you should be wearing. Some of you here today are senior deputies. In fact, 55% of you, about 5% of the House. And so when we get together, you may get tired of not knowing how things are meant to work this year. And you may feel pretty frustrated that even with all your experience, you feel like a novice. And regardless of your experience in the House of Deputies, some of you may think that there are too many COVID precautions, or not enough COVID precautions, or the wrong COVID precautions. I can't promise you that everything is going to go smoothly. In fact, I can pretty much promise you that at some point we're going to encounter a scenario we didn't quite anticipate, or a parliamentary snafu fueled by short tempers, or just too much work and too little time. And when that happens, we will stop, and I will ask Chaplain Mackenzie to lead us in prayer, and we will breathe and try again, clothed in compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And let me add a big dose of generosity for ourselves and for each other. And by doing so, I pray that we will find the joy of being together, despite the masks and the social distance, and the satisfaction of doing the work that God is calling us to do. Now, while I cannot guarantee that everything is going to go according to plan at all times, I can promise you that there are a lot of people who are working really hard to make this shortened convention work. And in a few minutes, I will introduce you to some of them. And I can promise you that we are going to be in this together, and we are going to care for one another. We're going to be the church. Now, to that end, a few practical notes. In a few minutes, Dr. Rodney Cauldron, our House of Deputies Public Health Advisor, is going to review our COVID care plan. It's on the House of Deputies website, and we'll put a link in the chat. And it's been sent to you a couple times via email. Please listen carefully as Dr. Cauldron reviews the plan, and make sure you are familiar with it. Please take a rapid COVID test before you leave home to ensure that you don't make the trip to Baltimore and then have to quarantine there. And if you're going somewhere else before you come to General Convention, then please test before you leave that place. When you arrive in Baltimore, you'll be provided with rapid tests to take each morning of convention, and we'll have masks if you need them. But I know that travel in the time of COVID can mean unexpected costs. And if your diocese does not reimburse you these costs, please remember that our new House of Deputies Mutual Aid Fund is there for each one of you. There's a link in the chat so you can apply for funds if you need them. And if you're able, please contribute to the fund. The presiding bishop and I have both contributed, as have a number of you, and anything we have left after all deputy requests have been answered will be donated to assist hospitality workers in Baltimore. We're not going to talk much about the legislative process today because we've covered that in a previous meeting, and the recording is available on the website, and there's a link in the chat. We're expecting to post the much anticipated, long awaited legislative calendar on the website on Tuesday, and we'll send you an email when it's ready. Just, I want to note, it's early. We usually never publish the calendar, the legislative calendar, until we're actually on site. But we, due to the hard work of Ryan Kusamoto and Emily Malott, the chair and vice chair of dispatch, and their whole committee, will be able to post it, we think, by Tuesday. So you'll have a chance to be familiar with it before we arrive. This is a benefit of the enormously hard work legislative committees have done online since late last year. At a regular convention, the legislative calendar is made each day and is driven by when committees finish their work. This year, we'll have the calendar largely set in advance, helping to ensure that we have time allotted for what legislative committees have judged to be the most important and essential work before us. To help ensure that we can do as much work as possible in 4 days, please be familiar with the draft order about this suspension or the use of the rules of order that we will be using during our time. And we will take up the changes in those rules, and we'll need to suspend the rules of order to do that in our first legislative session next Friday. The more familiar you are with these draft rules of order, the more efficiently we will be able to do our work together. Plus, the answers to many of your questions about how we will elect a new president and vice president are in that document. We've sent it to you a few times, and the link is in the chat. So, besides compassion and a mask, what should you wear to General Convention? Comfortable clothes and comfortable shoes. It is an immutable rule of General Convention that everyone sits in a draft except the people who are always hot. So pack a sweater, a jacket, or a wrap, despite the fact that it will be very hot and humid outside. Convention centers have very hard concrete floors, and your feet will know it after the first day, so comfortable shoes are a must. As for style, wear a collar or don't wear a collar. Wear distracting clothes or wear beige. Pockets, I like pockets, but you can make that choice yourself. This is my last convention as the president of the House of Deputies, as you know, and perhaps my greatest sorrow is about having it happen in the time of COVID is that so many beloved deputies and alternate deputies have chosen to stay home. I honor the people who have made that hard choice for the sake of their own health or the health of those they love, just as I honor those of you who are able to attend to do the holy work of governing our beloved church. Between now and when we gather, please pray for those who will not be with us, for the deputies who have died of COVID or during COVID, for the deputies suffering from long COVID, and for all of us who will soon be together. In closing, it seems auspicious to me that we're gathered on the feast day of Pauli Murray, who was added to the calendar of saints on a trial basis by General Convention in 2009 and permanently by General Convention in 2018. Murray, as you know, was a civil rights activist, a trailblazing feminist legal scholar, and the first Black person perceived as a woman who was ordained a priest in the Episcopal Church. As we begin our work together, let us pray that we will be inspired by their life and witness. Let us pray. Liberating God, we thank you for the steadfast courage of your servant, Pauli Murray, who fought long and well. Unshackle us from the chains of prejudice and fear, that we may show forth the reconciling love and true freedom which you revealed in your Son, our Savior Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Thank you. So here we go. Orientation. Let me just say a few words. I referred to it without numbers in the opening remarks. And that is, there has been a significant shift in the House since even in the last 3 months. 29% of the 868 originally certified deputies have resigned or are unable to attend. That's 29%. And our House has actually shrunk from 868 to approximately 800. To put that in perspective, I don't have the numbers for 2018, but in 2015, because there's always some shrinkage of deputies, it was 5%. So we've gone from 5% turnover to 29% for lots of different reasons, but certainly in the last 2 to 3 months, COVID related. We've had 102 alternate deputies of an estimated 455 certified alternates resign. That's 22%. And we now, and that group has shrunk as well. We now have 409 alternates. And as I think you know, first alternates in each order will be admitted to the convention center to be seated in the House of Deputies in what was the gallery section for visitors. We've also had some significant changes and resignations from legislative committees. Of the 483 deputies who were appointed to legislative committees, 13% or 62 have resigned. I want to commend all of you who have served on legislative committees, especially the officers, the chairs, the vice chairs, the secretaries, the assistant secretaries, the dispatch liaisons. You've done amazing work under some difficult circumstances, because we really thought when we decided to do everything online that life would be back to normal. But of course, this pandemic has tricked us at almost every turn when we thought we were returning to life as normal. I'll have more demographics for the House shortly in a few days, and we'll publish those and make those available to you. We're going through those now, but nearly 50% of the House now is our first-time deputies. So we're going to need to be patient. Those of you who are experienced deputies are going to have to, or I'm asking, I'm urging, encouraging you to assist new deputies. We have time constraints. So the microphone is not the place for any deputy to learn. If you have what we call a parliamentary inquiry, or you're confused, find somebody with a yellow ribbon on their name badge that denotes them as a senior deputy, and see if you can get your question answered that way. The schedule, you have a copy of that. If you don't, it's on the General Convention website. There are 3 evenings reserved for legislative sessions. I would not recommend you make 3-hour dinner plans those evenings. We are certainly going to use the first evening, and it is likely we may use 1 or 2 of the other 2 sessions. And that is so that we can get through elections, budget, and as many resolutions as possible. So let me take a minute and now introduce you. And I don't think we're going to be able to, there's nearly 600 people here, so I'm not sure we'll be able to focus on a picture, but I just want to make sure you know that there are a lot of people who are officers of the House or serving in some other capacity who are serving the whole House and you. And the first, of course, is Vice President Byron Rushing, who is the longest serving deputy, 16 general conventions. I thought I had a lot under my belt, but he has 16, and he has served with distinction. There is, all of us who are in leadership positions have been making sure that we have cross-training and people who are backing us up. So in the House of Deputies Rules of Order, which is scintillating reading, I hope you will read them soon. And in fact, they really are important to be familiar with. But if for some reason the president or the vice president cannot chair, the president can appoint any deputy to preside. We call it the designated survivor rule of order. And in 2018, John Kitagawa of Arizona was the designated survivor. And for this convention, I've appointed Deputy Sam Candler of Atlanta to serve in that capacity. Secretary of the House of Deputies is Michael Barlow, who's not able to be with us today as he is on his way to Baltimore. Another officer of the House who is not in the House every minute is the Treasurer of General Convention, Kurt Barnes, but he will have a place to sit. We have Chaplain, our for the third convention in a row, Lester Mackenzie of Los Angeles. I have added a chaplain because we're going to be having worship each morning in the House of Deputies to work with Lester, and very happy to have Deputy Greg Milliken of the Diocese of Chicago assisting in that way. Parliamentarians Brian Crislock of Olympia and Tom Little of Vermont. And assisting with the queuing system, which you'll be oriented to the first day of convention, is alternate Deputy Rob Spanauer of Vermont. Chancellor Sally Johnson of Minnesota and Mike Glass of San Joaquin. Mike is also the chair of the House of Deputies Resolution Review Committee. I've appointed 2 sergeants at arms. You may recall that the last sergeant at arms was Richard Miller, a 10-time deputy from Southeast Florida, who unfortunately died during this past triennium. He served with distinction. And I had appointed Tim Dyer of Northwestern Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, he's not able to come to convention. So I have now appointed deputies Patty Downing and D.L. Casson of the Diocese of Delaware to serve as sergeants at arms. I have the most amazing group of people who support the office of the House of Deputies, of the President, Rebecca Wilson, Jim Naughton, Kathleen Moore, Sophie Kitch-Peck, Megan Allen, and a recent addition, Nancy Bryan. And I'm grateful every moment to all the support they provide. And finally, the newest member of the HOD team is Dr. Rodney Cauldron. Dr. Cauldron is my public health advisor. He'll be with us during the entire General Convention. He even has an office in the House of Deputies Hub, room 334, across from the PHOD staff office. Dr. Cauldron has given me an enormous amount of wise counsel. He's a board certified preventive medicine physician who's also residency trained in family medicine and certified as a medical review officer. In 30 years of practice in the United States Army, he was a clinician, an epidemiologist, a researcher, an academic, a medical review officer, and a public health emergency officer with postings in the United States, Korea, Thailand, and Kenya. And in addition to his medical degree, he holds a master's degree in public health from the renowned Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. It is a delight and a privilege to introduce Dr. Cauldron to you, who will now review the House of Deputies COVID care plan. Dr. Cauldron.
Thank you very much, President Jennings. Deputies, I can't tell you how much of a privilege it has been working with the leadership team as you are moving forward on a really epic adventure. COVID has changed so many things in all of our lives. We need to keep in mind it was probably the most impactful event that has happened in the world in the past 100 years. It affects everyone everywhere. Before I discuss the COVID care plan, I do want to just talk for a second about the overall public health posture. And my apologies if I slip into military speak. My wife always gives me a hard time, but the goal here is to successfully execute your mission, and your mission is critical. It is necessary for the functioning of the church and the good works that the church does. Given that, all of the precautions put in place are designed to, 1, protect the most vulnerable amongst you, and 2, to ensure that you are able to successfully complete your mission. We discovered in the Army, and people have discovered around the world, that nothing can shut work down faster than an outbreak of an infectious disease. And with the new strains of COVID, they can actually move rather rapidly through a group of people. So the reasons behind all of the recommendations are simply that, so that you can execute your mission safely with the most vulnerable in mind. That being said, in addition to COVID, keep in mind that probably your biggest risk on this trip is your drive to the airport or your drive to Baltimore. So please, please, please drive safely. Even before traveling to the convention, though, this is the time to start thinking about protecting yourself. Starting today, I will not go into indoor spaces in public without wearing an N95 mask. The reason is, if I become infected with COVID between now and the convention, I can't accomplish my mission. And the same would be true for any of you. There's a 5-day isolation period from the time of onset. So, you do the math and work it backwards. The other thing I recommend is that deputations consider a designated survivor. If you want your diocese, if you want to ensure your diocese, your deputation has a vote, you need to make sure that at least one member of that deputation can be present to vote. If you all travel together in a car, if you all sit next to each other on the plane, if you all go out to dinner together, you run the risk of everybody becoming infected at once and having to isolate simultaneously, and you don't get to execute your vote. So keep that in mind. The one other public health caution I have for you is keep in mind that Baltimore can be a difficult city. My apologies to the Diocese of Maryland, but I lived in Baltimore long enough to know that it can be dangerous. And if you're not from there, you don't know where those neighborhoods are. You can be on a perfectly awesome street and go 1 block east or west and be in a really, really dangerous neighborhood. So bear in mind, if you're going out walking, if you're going to be doing exercise, check out the area with somebody familiar with Baltimore first, and consider not being alone. So now I will transition to the COVID care plan, which really is designed to provide a backstop for all of you. Despite all of our best efforts, we fully expect that some of you are going to test positive for COVID during the convention. All of the testing, all of the masks, all of that are outstanding. The vaccine mandate, these are all really, really beneficial, but we know that COVID is excellent at evading our defenses. And no matter how good we are at following them, some people will likely test positive. So we have a plan in place. And this plan is to ensure that you have access to the information you need to provide yourself with the medical care. We are not able to provide medical care for you. Neither I nor any members of the medical support team are licensed to practice medicine in the state of Maryland. But we are able to ensure that you have the information necessary to receive care. The first thing you do is that if you have shortness of breath or any really concerning medical conditions, pick up the phone and call 911. That's a do not collect $200 sort of thing. Call 911. Don't take chances with your life. We know that COVID can start off with moderate symptoms and progress rather quickly to life-threatening symptoms. If you're not experiencing those kind of symptoms, the first thing I would like for you to do is to send me a text, or you can use an app, although I won't get that. I have Signal, I have WhatsApp. I will get it, but it won't ring on my phone at night, whereas a text will ping me. I will not be reporting your names or your demographics or any of that to anyone. other than members of the medical support team, if I am unable to follow up with you. Both I and the medical support team are trained in privacy rules, and will never divulge outside of ourselves any of the information. The reason we want you to text me to let me know you're positive is so that I can track the numbers of infections and make sure that we don't have a brewing problem, or that we don't need to take further steps to prevent spread of a burgeoning outbreak. So this actually is really important to us to be able to keep our eye on the ball, as it were. There are several ways that you can obtain treatment after you've contacted me, or even before. There's a telehealth site called sesamecare.com that you can reach out to. It gives you the providers that are in the area and the length of time between when you are on the site and when they'll be able to have a telehealth visit with you, as well as the cost. There's a link on the care plan that you'll receive to test to treat options within Maryland and within the Baltimore area. The reason that isn't always going to be an option is that the hours of that are very limited. But it is a very convenient and cost-free way when it is open for you to receive testing and treatment if you are positive. There are volunteers in place to assist, either getting you to these sites or running to get medication at local pharmacies, because we certainly don't want you traveling any more than necessary if you know you have COVID. Obviously, any of you can refuse any of this. You have complete autonomy, but these are just resources we are putting in front of you. If you've driven to Baltimore, if you're in the local area, if you test positive and you aren't experiencing any significant symptoms, the best bet for you is to get into your car, unless you're carpooling, and drive back to where you came from, so that you can isolate in the comfort of your own home. Obviously, much more pleasant than doing so in a hotel room. If that isn't a possibility, you are going to need to stay in your hotel for 5 days following the positive test. And the day of the test is day 0, so tomorrow would be day 1. You also need to be fever-free for 24 hours before you can come out of isolation. There are volunteers who will assist in making sure food is delivered to your door, and any other medication or life support items that are needed. There's also a pastoral support team that will be on call, because we are aware of the mental strain that COVID has put on all of us, but being isolated is just one step beyond that. And so it's great that the House of Deputies has put together a support team for that. So in conclusion, again, I really hope that none of you will have to avail yourselves of the COVID care plan. The best way you can protect others is also protecting yourself and following the rules as best as you can. They are uncomfortable. I'm sorry that people are not going to be able to gather in the way that they want. I miss that very much myself. But it is the COVID time. So that is all I have to say. Thank you, President Jennings.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cauldron. I always feel better after Dr. Cauldron speaks to us. And he's also going to be speaking to us each day in the House briefly. And at the end of our time together, we'll have an opportunity. You can ask me or any member of my team or Dr. Cauldron any questions that you might have. I want to highlight again the mutual aid plan, which is for the House of Deputies. I said early on that no deputy would be, or alternate deputy would have to manage COVID or any kind of issue alone. We are a community of deputies and alternates. This mutual aid fund is going to ensure that people also have the funds they need for unexpected expenses. And we've already had some people apply. So it's confidential. There are a few people I'm not going to know that you received aid. We have a small group who is dealing with that, and they also know about confidentiality. So if you're concerned about that, you do not need to be concerned. Like I said, the fiscal agent and a staff person will know because they have to process the payments. So please use that as needed for any variety of expenses. And I just want to say that if you end up having to stay in your hotel room, you contact the General Convention office at gcsupport@episcopalchurch.org, and they will make those arrangements for you. As long as we're on the tough subjects, I also want you to know about how you can report concerns in terms of sexual harassment or any other kinds of behavior that makes it difficult or impossible for you to do to engage in your ministry of governance as a deputy or an alternate. So we want everyone in the House of Deputies to feel safe and to be safe, and we want you to know who you can contact if anything happens at any time and any place at General Convention that makes you feel unsafe or that you think someone should know about. So there are several things you can do, and we will be posting this. Am I correct, Rebecca Wilson, on the House of Deputies website? I don't need to go through every sentence of this, but we have
Yes,
four,
that's right.
thank you. We have 4 people designated to whom you can report: the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, Rebecca Wilson, who has a lot of, all 3 have a lot of experience in this area, as well as the Reverend Canon Rafael Zoria of Puerto Rico, who is bilingual in Spanish and English, a deputy from Puerto Rico, and a canon on Bishop Morales' staff. You can also tell the chair of your deputation and or your bishop. However, if you choose not to share the information with the president of the House of Deputies, I might not be able to respond to the situation because I do have some things that I'm able to do. So this will be available on the website. It'll also be available in the office of the president in room 331. So I just want you to know that that's an important part of how we live a common life together. You can reach me or my staff before General Convention. Contact at houseofdeputies.org. Anytime you have a question or concern, that is the email and you'll get a quick response. The same thing, the same email, contact at houseofdeputies.org, is available during General Convention, or you can also, there will always be a staff person we'll publish what the hours will be in the PHOD staff office, room 331 in the convention center. We're going to have a hub, the HOD hub. It's not party rooms, but it is a hub with Dr. Cauldron will have a private office. Our chaplains and pastoral support people will have an office. I have a private office, the staff, there's something else that I'm missing, but it's all in one section, which is nice. You don't have to go all over the place. I just want to remind you that we're not doing a orientation today around the iPads, the V-binder, the queuing system, or voting procedures. What will happen the first legislative day, we'll gather for worship at 8:30. As soon as worship is completed, I ask you to go to your seats, and we will immediately move into, and let me just say a word about worship. I might as well disappoint you now rather than later. And that is, we've had to pivot significantly. So we're not having worship with everyone together. The House of Bishops will worship in the House of Bishops, and the House of Deputies will worship. The deputies and the alternates will worship in the House of Deputies. Lester McKenzie, Greg Milliken, and Kathleen Moore have done amazing work in pivoting. The services in the two houses will be very similar, but not exactly the same. I'm happy to say we'll have a piano. Greg Milliken is an accomplished pianist, and Lester will have his drums, thank goodness, but we're not going to have congregational singing. And you may hear the bishops singing. They're making their own decisions about what they are comfortable with. But in the House of Deputies, we will not be having congregational singing, although we will have music. So after worship, then if you take your seats, there'll be a 30-minute orientation to the technical aspects. And that will, and then we'll move right into our first legislative session. In terms of the legislative process, as I said in the opening remarks, we're not going to go into that there today. I mean, if there are some specific questions during Q&A, we'll certainly try to address those. If you have not watched the video of the parliamentarian walking through the legislative process that we'll be using, the special rules of order, and the various motions that will be used, please do that. It's will be available. It's already available on the House of Deputies website. And I think it's been sent to you by email as well. I think it was in the email reminding you of this orientation. Finally, before we go to questions, I just have a few things to say about decorum. My mother's favorite subject, decorum. Under the page 304 in the Rules of Order of the House of Deputies, really, if you need a project, read the Rules of Order. It really will give you a very comprehensive sense of how we order our common life and get things done and treat one another in the House of Deputies. But deputies are, under the rules, required to attend all sessions. If you cannot attend, then that's why we have the first alternates in each order in the House. You can swap out your credentials in order to give your seat. Although remember that if the alternate gets really thrilled about being in there, they still have to give their seat back to you when you request it. Communications devices. It used to be in the time of dinosaurs, when I attended my first convention, that no communication devices were allowed on the floor, and we don't do that anymore. Communications devices, you can bring your cell phones, your computers, other communication devices, but we ask that you don't talk on the telephone on the floor of the House of Deputies. You can say, you can answer it, but then you need to walk off the floor to take any call. And so there's no talking on communication devices during legislative sessions. And please, so I don't have to say anything, put all your devices on silent mode. It's amazing what 800 pings sound like altogether. It will be reminiscent of when we used to click notebooks. And really, it's just common sense to respect the deputies who are seated near you. Distribution, another important item is that distribution of printed, digital, or other materials can only be distributed to the House with my approval. So don't be putting campaign literature. Don't give an article of your favorite support of your favorite resolution. Don't be handing out pins, except the HOD pin, which will already be there, unless you talk to me or you ask for a vote of the House, which the House can decide to allow a deputy to distribute material, although I don't think I've ever seen that vote happen. So it's physical materials on the floor and also digital materials distributed through software or devices. Only deputies may come on the floor. Your bishop says hello from the program budget and finance joint session, which is the one time the bishops will be permitted in the House of Deputies on the third day in the afternoon because it's late in the COVID infection cycle. Please don't ask your bishop to come on the floor to take a picture with the deputation. We're really trying to have pods, you know, there's the bishops and there's the deputies, and we're trying not to mix the pods. And finally, so don't invite somebody to come on the floor who is not a deputy. And this is an interesting tradition. I always have kind of ambivalent feelings about it, but at the end of a session, it is the tradition of the House that everyone keeps their seat until the president stands up. I think maybe that's because in case the president forgot something and suddenly needs to say something, but it's also, I think, intended as a mark of respect. So that's the decorum, and I'm sure that I have an opportunity as the chair to make remarks each morning. And so if there are things that we need to remind ourselves of, I will bring that to your attention. And there's always the sergeant at arms who I don't want them to be COVID police, but please wear your masks. Please do not bring food onto the floor of the House. I know that is a time-honored tradition. I never had to go to lunch because everybody always gave me snacks. I sometimes joke that the floor of the House of Deputies looked like a delicatessen. That is the place where, that's the way COVID gets spread. Of course, we want you to have fluids and keep yourself hydrated. So there's no ban on that, but please do not bring food. And I will say that there are some deputies who need an exception for medical reasons. If that is the case, please write to my office. And again, I don't need to know about that, but my office will consult with or direct you to have a conversation with Dr. Cauldron, who's already done that and has been extremely helpful. So let's have some questions and answers. I'm going to ask you to raise your Zoom hands, and Sophie Kitch-Peck will call on people, and if I can't answer it, I will ask a member of the team to answer the question.
All right, our first question is from Kevin Miller.
Please proceed. You'll hear me say that many times over 4 days. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I guess my question is, I guess it's twofold. One, for the medical team, what would be the best COVID safe way to get down to Baltimore? And second, would you recommend that I either isolate or severely limit my activities for the next few days before I head out?
Dr. Cauldron, would you please respond?
Wonderful questions. The COVID safest way to get to Baltimore would be to drive alone, if you're able to do that. We know mixings in airports and train stations are risk factors. We also know that being in an aircraft is a risk factor for outbreaks. It can be mitigated somewhat by the wear of a high quality mask, but nothing mitigates down to 0%. And yes, I would recommend limiting your activities beginning today. As I said earlier, I'm going to start wearing an N95 mask when I go out into public. And I will not, in fact, even be participating in 4th of July festivities this year, which for me is a big thing. So I encourage everybody to take these sorts of precautions to make sure you're able to be there and to vote. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
All right, it looks like our next question that I see with the person that our hand raised, President Jennings, is Henry Bear. I hope I said that.
Deputy Bear from Oklahoma.
Yes, thank you. I've noticed in the chat, a lot of people have the same comment that I have. And with the registration ending at 7 p.m., most of us have no way of getting there before 7. Our flights come in late afternoon or early evening. Anybody from the central part of the country all the way to the West Coast, 7 just doesn't work, and you're going to have a huge crowd the next morning unless that can be extended.
I can answer that. I don't control registration, so I suggest that you send an email to gcsupport@episcopalchurch.org because the General Convention office is, they are the ones who manage the registration and set the hours. But thank you for that question. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our next question, President Jennings, comes from Ed Thompson.
Hello. Please proceed.
Hi, President. Sorry if I missed this. My question is, large cities and large meetings like this are opportunities for sex trafficking and child trafficking. Where can we find tips on how to spot this and report it?
Thank you very much for that. If you would let my office do a little research on that, we will provide some information to the House about that. I don't have anything at the tip of my fingers right now, but thank you for that. That is a critical issue, of course, and we will get back to all of you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, we have Diane Smith.
Deputy Smith from the great Diocese of Ohio, please proceed.
Good afternoon, President Jennings. This is a very mundane question, but are we expected to pretty much stay in our seats? Is this kind of second grade like, or are we to mix a little bit more like what it was in the past, or are we pretty much fixed for the time that we're on the floor, except when we're going to the microphone?
Thank you. That's a really good question. Those of you who have attended convention in the past know that very often legislative committees end up having to huddle on the floor of the House. I have asked that not take place, because if you imagine 20 people in a, like a rugby scrum, that's just too close a contact. So we will have rooms available in the convention center for any committees that need to meet, and that seating will be socially distanced. I'm going to ask Dr. Cauldron. I'm no clinician, but the kind of mingling and schmoozing that we all love to do, I think you really want to keep it to a minimum, because there are 800 people on that floor. Dr. Cauldron, could you comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. The risk, if you are crossing, say, from your seat to another seat, you come in close contact to a number of people. Anybody you're walking past, you are putting at a certain degree of risk. It's minimal for each interaction, but you take multiple interactions, and eventually the risk goes from being minimal to being significant. Again, trying to limit any unnecessary interactions between individuals will be the best chance you have to being able to participate and to carry out your mission.
Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, we have Ed Sisson next.
Deputy Sisson from Mississippi, please proceed.
The form that we used to report our vaccination status had a line where you could report COVID test. Are we expected to report our daily COVID test, or are we on an honor system?
My understanding is that we're not required to report our daily tests. And I did notice in the chat that somebody asked if daily testing kits will be provided. When you register, you will be given 5 rapid tests to use. One when you go back to your hotel room after you register, if it is the day before, and then one each morning of the convention. But no, you will not. I think there was conversation about that, but it was going to take an inordinate amount of time. So yes, the honor system. And it's also the honor system about reporting a positive test. I urge you to confidentially report a positive test to Dr. Cauldron, because it's the one way we have of monitoring, in a panoramic way, what is happening in both houses. Thank you, Deputy Sisson.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Pamela Harris.
Deputy Harris, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize in advance for the beeping. One of my smoke detectors needs a new battery. My question has to do with the fact that although I am capable of walking, if I have to go long distances, I need to use cane. And our deputation is staying at the Days Inn, which it looks like on the map that it's about 2 long blocks from the convention center. Will there be any kind of transportation available, or do we have to hoof it?
I would suggest that, again, that you contact GC support at episcopalchurch.org. There is not like a shuttle bus that will be happening, but there is scooter rental. You can check about renting a scooter, which I think in this case sounds like it might be very helpful. And if your deputation cannot pay for that, that's why we have a mutual aid fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Kevin Babb.
Deputy Babb of Springfield. Please proceed. You are on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Madam President. Is ECW Triennial also convening, or have they made alternate arrangements?
No, when the presiding officers asked the design group made recommendations about how to shorten and decrease the size. The triennial agreed to our recommendation not to meet adjacent to General Convention or during General Convention. I think they are still in the process of determining how they might like to have a meeting, but they will not be, and I'm sorry about it, we'll miss them, but the triennial will not be present in Baltimore.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Harold Patrick.
Deputy Patrick of Southern Ohio, please proceed.
Indeed. So good afternoon, President Jennings. My question also relates to transportation. From the airport to our hotels, is there some recommendation between Uber or taxi as a preference?
I think you might want to look at the lines. I don't have a recommendation about Uber or taxi. I think that usually the airport knows when major conventions are coming in town. And so I think you just use whatever's most comfortable for you.
Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, our next question is from Adam Hamilton Ferguson.
From the Great Diocese of Central New York, from whence I came. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a very incredibly mundane question for you and Dr. Cauldron, but how soon before coming to Baltimore should we test? You say test before you come. How soon?
I will defer to Dr. Cauldron.
So my preference would be at the last possible minute, if you will. Essentially as you're walking out the door with enough lead time to allow you to change plans. Omicron variants come on very, very, very quickly. And we in fact expect a number of tests to be negative, even in those who will the following day test positive, having already been infected. The closer to the time you leave, the more likely you will be to catch an infection.
Thank you.
Not to catch it yourself, but to figure out that you have it.
Thank you. Deputy Haight from West Tennessee just posted in the chat something that I wish I'd remembered, but thank you for bringing it to my attention, is that the General Convention office is asking people to schedule their registration times, and that link is in the chat.
Okay, our next question, I think, although maybe my Zoom is being a little weird because the hand isn't as bright, is from Reese Richards.
Deputy Richards from the beautiful Diocese of the Virgin Islands, please proceed.
Good afternoon, and thank you, President Jennings. My question, I have two questions. I heard mention of the use of the N95 mask. Is it permissible for us also to use the blue or black surgical mask? I have difficulties keeping the N95 on because it's affecting my vision. The second question is—
Let me answer that one. I can tell you right now that medical surgical medical procedure masks are also permitted.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, if we travel there by automobile, will there be accommodations at the convention center or in the perimeter for parking?
I believe that, again, that would be an email to send to gcsupport@episcopalchurch.org. I think each hotel has their own parking garage or adjacent parking. I don't know about the actual convention center.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
But the General Convention office would know that.
All right, President Jennings, our next question is from Margaret Porter.
Deputy Porter of New Hampshire, please proceed.
Thank you, President Jennings. This question relates to committee leadership. At past conventions, those presenting resolutions move to the front of the House, and on the first day, normally the vice chair of a committee goes along with and is acknowledged. My question has to do, will there be guidance for such persons on how they are to navigate and any protocols that are to be followed?
Thank you. Actually, I had a meeting about that this morning. We're still sorting that out, and I'll be in touch with all committees, committee leadership about that. We really don't, my understanding is at least 10 committees have sent all of their resolutions to the consent calendar, which means they wouldn't be presenting at the podium. However, to have 10 to 12 committees come to the podium is probably equivalent to at least 3 or 4 resolutions, because it will take that kind of time. So we're working now on a way to frankly honor and recognize those committees who made the difficult choice to send their resolutions to the consent calendar. And I'll be in touch with you about that before General Convention begins. The other thing, just for committee chairs and vice chairs, is that you will be receiving probably tomorrow an email with the script for those of you who will be making committee reports. We ask every chair to follow that script, or another reporting officer, for instance, if you have the vice chair reporting. And this time you will have only 2 minutes if you wish to give an explanation. No long explanations. We're trying to make sure that that the House can consider as many resolutions as possible. So there are a lot of things we're doing differently at this convention: recognition of leadership teams of committees, and also the actual script and explanations of resolutions. I'll be in touch, I promise.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Nancy Kuntz.
One of the newest deacons in the church, Deputy Kuntz of Idaho. Congratulations on your ordination.
Well, thank you, Madam President. I saw this question come up in the chat, and it's something I've been wondering as well. Are we discouraged from decorating our poles this time to prevent people from wandering around, or go ahead?
Oh, you can decorate your poles. I'd be really depressed if we didn't decorate poles. I saw one thing about how tall. Well, you know, I don't have any regulations as long as it doesn't, you know, go over into somebody else's deputation or creates a hazard on the floor. So I absolutely hope you all, you know, it's a time-honored tradition to decorate the stanchions, and I think I'll probably have a prize for the deputation with the best decorations.
Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from John Michael Sophus.
Deputy Sophus from Delaware.
Good afternoon. This is a very mundane question, but I know that food is verboten on the floor, but I'm assuming we can have our water bottles.
Absolutely. Bring your water bottles. Bring refillable water bottles. There will be water stations available for refilling.
You anticipated my question, President Jennings, and that is, will there be water stations available? Thank you.
I hope it's not the last time I anticipate a deputy's question.
Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, at this time, there are no more questions.
Really? You sure?
No hands are raised.
All right, was there anything anybody saw in the chat that was really critical, you thought, and has not been answered?
Thank you. I just had one addition to what I'd said earlier in terms of COVID care plan. If you do test positive, CDC guidance currently is that your close contacts who are fully vaccinated do not need to quarantine. To make things even tighter than that within this group, though, we're recommending that if you are a roommate of someone who tests positive, that you do quarantine for the 5-day period. The risk of acquiring an infection from a roommate or an intimate partner is as close to 100% as almost anything I can come up with. The actual number is greater than 80%. So if you are a roommate of someone who tests positive, please do the right thing and quarantine.
Thank you very much.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Sue Bolin.
Please proceed.
Thank you. There have been several comments in the chat about safety and walking. And I know Dr. Cauldron mentioned this before. Many of us will be walking from our hotels and or going about to walk because we're probably not supposed to be using the gyms. Is there going to be like a map or something that shows where it is safe to walk in that neighborhood?
I would inquire at the front desk of your hotel. They generally have those kinds of walking or running maps and can advise you. I'd be careful late at night and extremely early in the morning.
Thank you.
President Jennings, our next question comes from Laura Clark.
Deputy Clark from Rhode Island. Please proceed.
Thanks for recognizing little Rhodey. When I saw that you were recommending us to bring water bottles, having lost items because they were more than 3 ounces, I checked with, we're flying Southwest, and packing an empty water bottle is permissible if you pack it, if you ship it, or if you carry it on. So I just wanted to give that little bit of information. Just don't fill it up.
Thank you.
All right, our next hand, President Jennings, is from Elliot Moss.
Deputy Moss, Western Mass.
Thank you, President Jennings. I was just wondering when we should expect the report from the Prayer Book Liturgy and Music Committee.
Which report? Oops, you're still on mute.
Any report? I see no report from that committee posted.
Some of the committees have filed their reports, others are still in the process. And so just keep an eye on the V binder.
Okay, thank you.
President Jennings, our next question comes from Polly Getz.
Deputy Getz, former parliamentarian of the House of Deputies, San Diego, please proceed.
Thank you very much, President Jennings. It's been a current practice in a lot of hotels for people to request that they not receive service from the hotel staff on a daily basis. I'm wondering if there is a recommendation that we should be making in that regard. I, for one, don't need my sheets changed every day. And that might be another method of reducing risk.
Yeah, Dr. Cauldron, do you have any comment about that?
Yeah, so the risk of somebody coming into your room when you are not there is actually fairly low. Unlike influenza, which spreads by touching a contaminated surface or a doorknob, we spent a lot of time early in COVID trying to prevent that mode of transmission, but it just really is not a big way that COVID transmits. However, I will point out that from an environmental standpoint, not putting any additional stress on the system in terms of water, electricity, and the like is a good way to help protect the environment.
Please remember to tip your housekeepers in hotels and other service personnel. They depend on it. Sophie, I'm gonna ask you to call on Deputy Joan Klein from Southwest Florida.
Yes, Deputy Klein, you should be unmuted.
President Jennings, there was a question earlier about the deputy who said she had a hard time walking, and I too am not able to walk any distance. I have been looking. I originally called the concierge at the Hilton Hotel and asked if they had some sort of service. Their scooters, I'll call them electric scooters, were all rented at that point. But they gave me the name of a company that I contacted. They were extremely reasonable, and they will deliver and they will pick up those scooters free of charge. So the only help that I can give, because I can't find it because I'm sitting here and this information is packed away, just call the concierge at the Hilton Hotel and ask if they can give you the name of a service not far from the convention center. And I think she'll be able to help herself that way.
Thank you so much, Deputy Klein. That's very helpful information.
Thank you.
President Jennings, our next question comes from Nancy Fitzgerald.
Deputy Fitzgerald, please proceed.
I'm from the Diocese of San Joaquin.
Right, that's right.
Okay. When Dr. Cauldron, that's all right. I'm brand new. When Dr. Cauldron talks about quarantining as a roommate, I will have a roommate. If I get COVID or test positive, let's put it that way, and will she be quarantined separately, or will we be together for those 5 days where she could catch it and then 5 days later have to quarantine?
Well, certainly Dr. Cauldron should answer this, but I would think that if one of you tests positive, then you need to see if the hotel has a separate hotel room. Frankly, the best thing to do is if people are not sharing hotel rooms. Would you agree with that, Dr. Cauldron?
I would certainly agree, but obviously understand that cost, excuse me, is an issue. Should you test positive, I would encourage your roommate to stay in a different room to help minimize their chance of catching COVID. Should the other person then test positive, you guys can go back to sharing the room though, because you can't infect somebody who's already infected. So just the logistics of this all can become a bit tangled. So feel free to, if you have any questions regarding any of this, these sort of things, please just text me during the convention.
Great, thank you.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Scott Slater.
Deputy Slater of Maryland.
This isn't a question, but President Jennings, if you would like me to say a brief word about walking and issues of transportation, I'm happy to do that.
That would be great.
Thank you. So I want to refer everyone, as I've done in the chat, to our local hospitality website, which is www.gc80, which is spelled EAGHTY.org, where you can not only sign up for Maryland Night, but get lots of resources about Baltimore, including some virtual walking tours and recommended books and stuff like that. So please go to that. You can also find that on the general convention page. But walking around the immediate vicinity of the convention center and the Inner Harbor is very safe. I do it on a frequent basis. There's always lots of security down in that section, like in any tourist area. But the easiest and best walking in the morning, particularly in the morning, is along the Inner Harbor. There's an 8-mile-long promenade along the water that goes both directions from where we're all going to be. It's a phenomenal walking experience. So that's what I would most highly recommend if you want to get some outdoor exercise.
Thank you. Let me just say a word before we keep doing questions. We've gone past our hour. I'm going to stay on as long as there are questions. I'm going to ask that if you've already asked a question, you get to go to the back of the line so that other people who have not had an opportunity can do that. And let's just continue. Sophie.
In that case, President Jennings, our next question comes from Doug Goodlow.
Doug, Diocese of Missouri, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this. As I am a newbie, I usually carry some sort of a little snack because I'm diabetic, so it sounds like that's not permissible. Will I be able to walk away if I have to have something and come back, or?
This is what Dr. Cauldron has recommended, and I'll let him, this is a test if I get it right. For those who have medical reasons, such as being diabetic, and you need to eat on a regular basis with a snack, we ask that, he thinks that it would be best if you would be at the end of the row in the second table of your second row of your deputation. Deputations are 4 and 4, 2 tables back to back. And that you do that as unobtrusively as possible. You can always decide to leave the floor and stand in a spot. I'm not going to prevent people from leaving the floor if they need to attend to their personal needs. Dr. Cauldron, would you want to add anything to that?
No, that's pretty spot on. The risk of any one individual eating small snacks on a floor is minimal. Again, though, it comes down to that if you have 800 people doing so, 800 times minimal becomes significant. And this is why the recommendation against, in general, people eating on the floor. But if you're diabetic, the risk of you suffering a hypoglycemic event is greater than the risk posed by your snacking throughout the day. Much like we encourage people to drink water, even though it's going to require breaking the seal on the mask, the risk of dehydration is far greater than the risk posed by that activity.
Thank you. And Deputy Goodlow, thank you for bringing that up so everybody could hear that.
All right, President Jennings, our next question is from Kristen Madden.
I believe I'm unmuted. Thank you. I'm from the Diocese of Utah. I just want to thank you, the Vice President, all the people in charge on your amazing work having this actually happen. A year late, far shorter, far smaller. It's my first time as a deputy. I volunteered in Salt Lake in 2015, but I'm so impressed by all that has gone in, the thoughtful, prayerful things that you have done to make this a good experience for us.
Thank you so much. Boy, there have been so many people who have worked so hard, and like you, I'm really grateful for everything they've done. Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Sarah Lawton.
Deputy Lawton, California, please proceed.
Thank you, President Jennings. Just two things. One is just to say in this forum, so you all know, our deputation has asked for and received permission to use clear masks for disability accessibility purposes for one of our deputies who reads lips. And I want you all to know that it's part of something that we asked for. And if your deputation has similar questions about accessibility, and I know we're balancing things here, I would definitely suggest that you write to President Jennings, who will also refer you to Dr. Cauldron. And thank you for that consideration. And then secondly, there's been a lot in the chat, but I'm not sure everyone got it. But this question about housekeeping that came up a few questioners back, I know we're balancing a lot of things, health, environment. We're also balancing support for workers who are now going to have, less job, less to do now that we have the shortened convention, and they've suffered greatly during the pandemic. The whole hospitality industry did. I'm part of the Episcopal Network for Economic Justice, and we will have tip envelopes. Also, Deputy Laura Russell from Newark, and we'll distribute them in as COVID safe a way as we can on the floor, from handing from table to table.
No,
and we recommend.
No,
yeah.
you can't do that on the.
Oh, can't do that. Okay, well, we'll have them.
There will be tables set out.
Okay.
In the back of, we're going to work on that. You can't distribute things. We really want to, we'll provide, sorry, I'm not being very articulate. We will provide a place for you to provide those envelopes so everybody can have access.
Great. Appreciate that. We will bring them to convention and we'll work with you to figure that out.
Great, thank you.
And just to say again that we really want to recommend daily housekeeping for those who can. It's different cleaners and jobs, every day. And we posted some links in the chat to why that is important for the workers. And we're recommending a $20 tip because of the shortened convention daily. So
thank you. Thank you. That's really good guidance. And sorry, I got a little about just distributing on the floor. There's going to be campaign material. There'll be things like the tips, any other kinds of informational things, swag, whatever. We're setting up a safe place to make all of that available to you.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Alan Murray.
Deputy Murray of Oregon.
Thank you, President Jennings. To bring up an issue, which is that I'm sure that a lot of deputations will be meeting during General Convention. In the past, people usually meet in person while eating lunch and all of that. So I'm just wondering whether Dr. Cauldron has any advice about refraining from doing that. Our deputation is going to be meeting by Zoom during convention. We'll be eating lunch in our hotel rooms and meet by Zoom. So just want to bring that to your attention about the possible risk.
Thank you. Dr. Cauldron?
You actually stated my recommendation. It is impossible to transmit COVID across the internet. And so if you have the ability to do that, that is the safest way to do it. If you do not, meeting outdoors is the safest place to meet in person. COVID does not transmit at all well outside. And so that is a great mitigation strategy. If you must meet inside, again, encourage masks unless somebody has a hearing impairment, and try to maintain the 6 feet distance, and that'll be the best you can do.
Thank you.
All right, President Jennings, our next question comes from Deborah McLaughlin.
Deputy Deb.
Hi, from Southeast Florida.
Florida.
And I just wanted to ask if somebody like Mr. Slater could give a brief info about the Maryland night.
Absolutely, Deputy Slater. Is Scott Slater is still in the house?
Or if anybody knows about it.
Well, there's.
I am not seeing him.
Okay, well, there is information on that website for the Diocese of Maryland that Scott mentioned. And I'm not sure what to say beyond that. I think that they did a lot of pivoting given COVID, and I think that their venues are outdoors. There it was just posted the link for Maryland night, and I really want to commend them for the pivoting that they did along with everybody else. And they're trying to make it as safe as possible. It's the last night, and the reason they put it on the last night, knowing that some people would be leaving before then, is again, it's late in the convention.
President Jennings, if I could just say, in addition to the Maryland night link that's in the chat, it is helpful to remember that the deadline to sign up for a Maryland night event is July 5th. That's this coming Tuesday at noon Eastern. So if you are interested in Maryland night, please take a minute this weekend to look at the information and make your decision and sign up in time.
Thank you, Rebecca.
All right, President Jennings, we have one more question, and it is from Maggie Tinsman.
Deputy Tinsman of Iowa.
Yes, thank you, President Jennings. I have one question. You mentioned about that we could bring our cell phones. Except for that, I am technologically incompetent, actually. And wondered, do we need to bring a portable computer too?
No, you don't. Every deputy will be issued an iPad, as they have for the last two conventions, where all of the legislative materials and supporting documents and things like the calendar will be available. And we will have orientation about that. And we will also, I believe they also are going to have tech support available to help deputies who need assistance. So you don't need to bring your own computer, but lots of deputies like to bring their own computer. So in the past it was prohibited, but that has been changed.
Thank you very much. I like the idea there's tech support.
Oh, Deputy Cornforth has said that he will assist you. So make sure the two of you sit right next to each other. I see another question that there'll be theme days. I thought about having a pajama party one night, but at a late session, but then I thought the Safe Church people would come find me. So as far as I'm aware, there are no theme days. Although sometimes deputations come up with their own.
All right, no one has their hand raised, President Jennings.
All right. Thank you, deputies and alternate deputies, for coming. I especially want to thank Dr. Cauldron for being here, for the staff support that is just essential to our smooth functioning, and to other members of the platform team who have been here. Your questions were kind of all over the map. I didn't call on them, but I was actually able to answer most of them. There is going to be a link of this meeting, a video posted, so that you'll be able to tell your fellow deputies and alternate deputies who weren't able to come I mean, this is more exciting than Apple TV. So they'll be able to watch it and see the kinds of things that we discussed and that I shared with you. Suffice it to say, I'm very excited to see you all in Baltimore. And I'm sorry that I won't see some of you, those who are not first alternates. I'm excited. I didn't say this in my remarks, but I'll say it now. I am thrilled about the choices you have in terms of electing a new president of the House of Deputies. The slate is younger and more diverse than ever in the church's history. Somebody asked me what my legacy would be, and I just don't think people should talk about their own legacies, because that's for other people to decide, not the individual, him or herself or their self. But if I had to, if you really forced me, I would say that my legacy is the fact that you have, as a House, the opportunity to elect any member of the House of Deputies who decided to put themselves forward, and it wasn't based on their income or their retirement status, because before this position was compensated, really only retired people and people of independent means were able to stand for election. So I just think it's a watershed moment in the House of Deputies. And every single one of the candidates for president and vice president have so many gifts, love this church so much, love the House of Deputies, and I know you will be well served. And it has been the privilege of my life to serve you as the president, and I thank you. We'll see you soon, and thank you so much for being here.
I am still here. For those who are still here, I know lots is going on in the world. I know it feels weighty. I know there's a lot of grief. And so I give thanks for one of my favorite quotes from Pauli Murray. Hope is a song in a weary throat. So when we gather, when we move, and I offer this blessing of light, an old Celtic style prayer. May the blessing of light be on you, light without and light within. May the blessed sunlight shine upon you and warm your heart till it glows like a great fire. And strangers may warm themselves as well as friends. And may the light shine out the eyes of you like a candle set in the window of a house, bidding the wanderer to come in out of the storm. May you ever have a kindly greeting for people as you go along the roads, the planes, and the trains. And now may God bless you and bless you kindly. Amen, amen, amen.